Welcome to Investing Talk Podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at Applovin. This company has been kind of attracting attention recently for both its growth, but also for some controversies. It's a very interesting story.
Yeah, it is a fascinating case. It's one of those situations where you have a company that's putting up some strong financial numbers, but at the same time, it's facing this wave of accusations. It really makes you wonder, can Applovin's success continue amidst all these challenges?
Let's break it down for our listeners then. So Applovin operates as this mobile advertising and gaming platform. Basically, they're in the business of helping app developers kind of navigate that mobile app world, especially when it comes to, making money and reaching users.
Think of them as like a bridge between the people who make the apps and the people who use them. On the one hand, Applovin offers developers those tools to make money from their work. And then on the other hand, it connects advertisers with a huge pool of potential customers who are using those apps on their phones.
And their financial performance has been, impressive. They just released their Q4 2024 earnings, and they were really strong. 44% year-over-year revenue growth, which brought them to $1.37 billion.
Yeah, but what's even more striking is their net income. That jumped by, get this, 248% to $599.2 million. These numbers, they really suggest that Applovin is operating efficiently and really taking advantage of a market that's, expanding quickly.
It does seem like they've tapped into something really big. What's driving this kind of growth? Why is the mobile gaming and advertising industry doing so well?
It's not complicated. The mobile gaming and advertising industry is booming. Just think about how much time people spend on their phones, and then how many of the apps that they're using are free. They rely on advertising for revenue. It's a huge market, and Applovin seems to be really well positioned to take advantage of that.
Are there any specific trends, within that mobile gaming market that are benefiting Applev?
Oh, absolutely. There are. Hybrid monetization, for example, is a really big one. That's basically where app developers use a mix of things like advertising, in-app purchases, and subscriptions to bring in revenue. And it's a strategy that really aligns well with Applovin's business model.
So they're helping developers manage that complex, world of monetization. I imagine that involves a lot of technical stuff too, like understanding how those ads are priced and how they're delivered within apps.
Oh, definitely. And that's where another major trend comes in-app bidding. That's where developers can get the best price for their ad space. And it's all done through these real-time auctions. Applovin is a major player in the space, and it's definitely helping them achieve that financial success we were just talking about. But like a lot of stories with those big highs, there's often a bit of a twist.
And that twist comes in the form of some pretty serious accusations that are being leveled against Applovin, and also those legal challenges, things that could really derail their success.
It's a complicated situation, for sure. We've got class action lawsuits that have been filed. They allege that Applovin wasn't completely upfront with investors about their financials, and that they might have even engaged in fraudulent practices. Specifically, they're talking about the Axon 2.0 platform, their AI-powered advertising technology.
Those lawsuits were filed, I think, between May 2023 and February 2025. Right. And they're really focused on these claims that Applovin made about the capabilities of the Axon 2.0. Investors are saying that they were, misled about how effective that platform really was, and that Applovin didn't give them accurate information in their financial reports.
And then there's these reports that have come out from short seller research firms, like we have Fuzzy Panda Research and Culper Research, and they've raised some really concerning possibilities. They accuse Applovin of things like ad fraud, stealing user data, and even potentially illegal tracking.
These are some serious accusations, to say the least. For instance, that report from Culper Research, they actually allege that Applovin was, serving ads to children, which would be a direct violation of privacy regulations.
And if that's true, these accusations kind of taint a very different picture of Applovin, one that doesn't really match the image of a successful tech innovator, It makes you question their ethics and how they operate. And investors, of course, they've taken notice.
Yeah, Applovin's stock price has been on a wild ride. After the really strong Q4 earnings, the stock shot up to over $525 a share. And then it took a nosedive, plunging by almost 50% to around, I think, $260.
That volatility, it just shows you how uncertain people are about Applovin's future. On the one hand, they've got great financial performance and they're in this growing market. But on the other hand, these allegations and these legal challenges, they could do some serious damage to their business and their reputation.
And to make matters worse, Applovin was also excluded from the S&P 500 index, even though their market cap was actually big enough to qualify them for inclusion.
That exclusion, combined with the fact that the markets have been generally on edge because of things like trade war concerns, it's all just added to the volatility surrounding Applovin. It seems like investors are really worried about whether this company can actually get past all these challenges.
And we're back with Investing Talk Podcast. So if you remember from part one, we were talking about the pretty fascinating situation with Applovin, a company that has those really impressive financial results, but also faces all those legal issues and accusations.
Right, and it's those accusations that I think we really need to unpack a bit more. I mean, they're pretty significant, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that class action lawsuit that was filed on behalf of the investors, that's a major concern. What it boils down to is that Applovin wasn't entirely honest about its AXON 2.0 platform. They're being accused of basically exaggerating what it could do, in terms of technology. This is not a small thing either, because that AXON 2.0 platform, it's like the core of their business, right?
Well,
It's supposed to be this super powerful AI engine that drives their ad revenue and makes everything more efficient.
Exactly. And if it turns out these accusations are true, well, it could seriously damage how investors see the company, and it could also lead to some pretty hefty fines and penalties.
And then we have those reports from the short seller firms, Fuzzy Panda and Culper Research, which, well, their claims are even more worrying. They go as far as to say Applovin was involved in ad fraud, stealing user data from Meta, and even tracking user behavior illegally.
These are big accusations, and they really call Applovin's ethics into question. Ad fraud, for example, that's where you create fake clicks and impressions to inflate your ad revenue. It really messes up the whole digital advertising system, and the consequences can be severe, both legally and for the company's reputation.
That Culper Research report, that one was particularly damaging. They claimed Applovin was showing ads to children, which is not only against privacy rules, but could also cause a huge backlash from parents and regulators.
And the potential fallout from all these accusations is huge. Imagine if they really are doing ad fraud. Advertisers would lose all trust, and that could destroy their revenue stream. And the implications for user privacy are also really concerning. If they really are tracking people illegally and stealing their data, they could face a mountain of lawsuits and investigations, which could basically shut them down.
Now, Applovin has denied all these accusations. They're calling them baseless and misleading. Their position is that these short sellers are just trying to manipulate the stock price for their own profit.
Which is a fair point. I mean, short sellers, they make money when a stock price goes down. So often they'll issue these negative reports hoping to cause a sell-off so they can cash in. So it's important to be aware of their motives and to really look closely at what they're saying.
But even if some of the accusations are exaggerated or untrue, the fact that there are so many of them and that they're so serious, it definitely creates a sense of doubt around Applovin. That's got to be a factor in the stock's volatility, and it's clearly making investors nervous. I mean, we saw that huge drop in the stock price.
It raises a fundamental question for investors, especially now when there's so much information, so many different stories out there. How do you know what's real and what's not? How do you decide if accusations are credible, especially when they come from people who have a reason to want the stock to go down?
It's tricky. I think it really underlines the need to do your homework, think critically, and not believe everything you hear, especially when you're thinking about investing.
And that's really why we're doing this deep dive into Applovin. We want to give you the information you need to make good decisions. We're not trying to say the company is good or bad. We're just giving you both sides of the story so you can see the opportunities and the risks.
So what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they try to make sense of all of this?
Well, first off, Applovin's financial performance is undeniably strong. They're making a lot of money, and they're profitable in a market that's growing quickly. That's something you can't ignore.
And secondly,
we have to take the accusations against them seriously. These aren't just minor issues. They go to the heart of how the company operates and whether they're acting ethically. If these claims are true, the consequences could be devastating for them.
okay, what else?
The situation is fluid, the legal stuff is still ongoing, and we don't know for sure what the truth is yet. It's a developing story, and investors need to keep up with it and be ready to change their strategies if things change.
So stay informed, be flexible. Makes sense. And finally,
there's just a ton of noise around Applovin right now. Lots of conflicting information and opinions flying around. It's important to filter that out, focus on the facts, and form your own opinion based on what you know.
don't just follow the crowd. Do your own research. Good advice.
This whole case really shows us that even in the tech world, where it's all about being innovative and disruptive, ethics and following the rules are still incredibly important. They're crucial to long-term success and sustainable growth.
It's not just about making a quick buck. You have to do it the right way.
Exactly.
Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. So we've covered Applovin's financials, those accusations, and now I guess the big question is, where do they fit in the whole mobile advertising and gaming landscape? I mean, it's a pretty competitive industry, right?
It's incredibly competitive. You've got major players like Google and Meta and Apple, and they're all fighting for market share. It's a crowded space.
And Applovin, I mean, even though they've been growing fast, they're still going up against those giants. How do they even compete with companies that big?
Well, Applovin has been pretty smart about it. They've really focused on specific parts of the mobile world, like niches. They've carved out a really strong position in mobile gaming, especially by giving developers the tools they need to make money from their games and reach more players. And they've also made some strategic acquisitions that have really helped them grow.
Like when they bought Adjust,
Yeah.
right? That mobile attribution and analytics company.
Yeah, exactly. That was a big one. Getting Adjust gave Applovin a lot more data and really valuable insights into how users behave. It shows that they're not trying to be everything to everyone. They're picking their battles and focusing on becoming the go-to platform for specific types of app developers and advertisers.
So instead of trying to do it all, they're finding those areas where they can really stand out and build a loyal customer base.
Right. And that approach, it's worked pretty well for them. They've managed to grab a decent share of the market, even with all that competition. But the question is, can they keep it going?
That's the challenge. I mean, the mobile market, it's constantly changing. New technologies, new platforms all the time. And those big companies we were talking about, they're not just going to sit back and watch. They're always trying to grow and get a bigger piece of the pie.
Definitely. For Applovin to keep succeeding, they're going to have to be really good at adapting, innovating, and staying ahead of the curve. They need to keep investing in their technology, come up with new products and services, and find good partners. That's how they'll stay competitive. But it's not just about the technology and strategy,
We were talking about those legal and ethical issues again.
I am. Those are big problems that Applovin can't just sweep under the rug. If they don't clear their name and get investors to trust them again, they're going to have a hard time attracting talent and getting the money they need to grow in the long term.
Yeah, trust is important in any business, but it's especially crucial in tech. Data privacy and security, that's everything these days. Applovin needs to show that they're serious about ethical practices and being transparent if they want to win back that trust from investors, advertisers, and users.
Exactly. And that's something investors need to think about seriously when they're deciding whether to invest in Applovin. They have potential, but those accusations are still hanging over them.
So where does that leave us? What's your take on Applovin? Buy, sell, or hold?
Well, right now I'd say hold. I mean, they're in a good market and they've been doing well financially. But with all this uncertainty about the legal stuff and the competition, it's hard to say for sure what's going to happen.
Seems like Applovin's at a bit of a crossroads. What they do next is going to be really important.
It is. Will they overcome the controversies and really become a major force in the mobile market? Or will they crumble under the pressure? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Applovin. It's a company with a really interesting story, lots of growth, lots of controversy, and a future that's still up in the air.
Hopefully this episode has given everyone some food for thought, some things to consider when you're looking at investment opportunities, especially in the tech world where things change so quickly.
Always a good reminder to do your research, be critical, and don't be afraid to ask tough questions. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to Investing Talk Podcast. Leave us a rating and review. It really helps other people find the show, and it keeps us motivated to bring you more in-depth analysis, the most fascinating stories in the business world. Thanks for listening.